Okay, we got a few things to cover here. Looks like we're going to talk about the sky, the fog, the lens flare, some water, and a character controller to add to your scene. So the first thing is Unity provides a default sky, and if you're happy with the default sky, leave it as the default sky. It doesn't, well, it does make a difference. I was going to say it doesn't, but if that's what you like, then that's what you should use. But it's really simple to add a skybox to your terrain. So you just, as stated before, you would come to your window and go to Asset Store, and the Asset Store will open as long as you're logged in. If you're not, then it's going to request you log in. Then you would type Skybox and do a search for skyboxes. Of course, I like the free stuff, so always, not always, don't follow what I say, but I choose free. And you can find some really cool skyboxes. I actually already downloaded a skybox, so I'm going to right click on the tab and close that tab and come down here to my assets, and you can see that I've imported a skybox and I kept one feature. I just kept one component because that's the only one I wanted to use, so I didn't want to fill my game up with a whole bunch of stuff. To create this skybox, I need to make a material. So I'm going to go into my material folder. I actually changed the layout here to try to give it some wide view as I was painting the terrain. So I'm going to go into my materials folder, right click, create material. Name this material Skybox. Now Skybox is a 6-sided square, so you're going to have to use 6 components to make this skybox. So in the shader, I am going to actually choose Skybox 6-sided. You would think it would be a cube, because if you're looking at it, you're like, oh yeah, that's just the inside of a cube. But no, it needs 6 actual textures to create a skybox. And it tells you which textures to choose. You have your front, your back, your left, right, up, and down. Now you can select the texture. Here is the back image. Like that. You don't want the back in the front, so I might type front to find that front image. And it brings the front image in. I select it, and you can see what's happening down here at the bottom. Another way to add to this textures is to find them in your skybox and drag and drop. So the next one is back. So I'm going to look through the textures, find the back, drag it and drop it. Left, drag it and drop it. I think you get the idea of what's going on. So you can click to select or find your textures and drag and drop. And if you can see down below in this display, we have the skybox, and you can click and drag around and see your skybox. You can also add some tinted colors to your skybox. Let's say you wanted to make it give it a completely different look. There you go, exposure. Exposure just means that you can take a look at what's happening down below in the area to see what's happening. Rotate it, doesn't matter. So I'm just going to say that's good for now. So to add this different skybox to the scene here, I would go to Window, Lighting. And within the lighting feature, you have an area that says Skybox. And right now it's at default. So I would select the little radio option and find my material skybox. That's the one. And you can see when I grabbed the skybox, that color I gave to the material actually changed the whole look of the scene. Now I'm not sure if that's what I want, so I'm going to go ahead and go back to my lighting here and change it back to a nice soft color. We'll keep going and see what happens. And it could be the exposure as well. I'm going to go with a light purple. and then try changing the exposure some. Bring it down. Okay, I'm liking that. So that's good enough. So when you have the sun, it says, what do you want to use for the sun? Now we already have a directional light, so we might as well just choose the directional light. And what I did there was double clicked on the directional light. Now also in this wonderful lighting area is this thing called fog. There's a drop down. I'm going to check fog, and fog will be added to the scene. And depending upon the speed of your computer, this could cause your computer to slow down. And you can see the default is gray, and off in the distance you see a gray fog. Now you can change the way that the fog is looked at. Exponential squared means the further out you look, the thicker it's going to get. So that's kind of what fog does. So I'm just going to leave it at that. And maybe change the color a little bit because I kind of have a pink purple theme going on. So that's pretty much your skybox and your fog and your sunshine. So I'm going to close this for now because there's also another option for a skybox. If you select your main camera, it says right here in the flags that your main camera is showing a skybox. You could just change it to a solid color and make that solid. And you see down in the default what's happening, and choose a color for your game. You know, I did this for another game I created, and it looked pretty good, but this time I'm going to go ahead and stick with the skybox and see what happens. And it's still looking pretty bright down there, so I think I need to go into the materials and change that exposure. And go back to my main camera. Yeah, that looks a little bit better to me. So we've covered now fog, skybox, the skyline, and the sunshine. Now let's select our directional light. Now sometimes people like that little flare that you get. When you look up at the sun, you sometimes get this flare, like if you took a picture with a camera, that's what that is. So what you want to do is add a flare to this particular sun. And after selecting directional light, you'll look over in the inspector and you'll see flare. And guess what you do? I think you're getting it. You would grab the little radio, and if you imported some skyboxes, there'll be all kinds of flares. I just kept one. So I'm just going to select that one and close the box. You could double click or select. So you now have a flare to your sun. That's pretty much got our little island going on. We just need some water to add to it, and some people like to paint water. I don't like that because for me it just doesn't look realistic. So the first thing I'm going to do so I can see what's happening, so over here in your little toggle, I'm going to turn it on and select fog, and the fog disappears so I can see my island. Now, when we started, we imported a few things. And one of those things was the environment. So when we go into our standard assets and find our environment, then we'll see something that says water. And there's two different folders for water. You're going to have to pick and choose which you would prefer. I'm going to go ahead and select the first water and go into the prefabs folder. And since my sky is kind of nighttime, I'm going to grab the nighttime water and just kind of set it right in here somewhere. Now you can see it's very, very small. I'm going to have to increase the size over in the transform area of the inspector window. And maybe go 200. I'm thinking that's pretty good. Even though the edges are showing, we could go a little bigger there. Yeah, we want to see this water in action. And in order to see the water in action, you kind of have to put a character in your game to view it. But first and foremost, I see it needs to be lifted up. So I'm going to select my water, lift it up to the edge here. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and add a character because we imported that earlier. Let me close all of this down and find our characters. Now for myself, I already knew that I was going to create a third-person character, so I removed all of the first-person characters. Now I'm going to go into my prefabs. Prefabs has two different third persons. One is an AI third person. We're not going to use that. We're just going to use the normal third person. You know what? I want to put him right there next to the water, and I want to zoom in on him. So I select my F key. Now I've already textured poor little Ethan here, and I'll show you how to do that later. I'm going to turn Ethan around to face the water and then move my camera holding my Alt key down, normal click. I'm going to turn and look at the water this way. Select my camera, game object, align with view. So now you can see it's aligned with view. So guess what happens when I select play? Wow. It's reflecting and moving. I'm really liking that.